Welcome to the Week 1 wrap-up here at the 17th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers. Another season is upon us. Week 1 is behind us already. Are you already regretting some of your draft decisions or feeling pretty good about them? How quickly do you start to adjust your roster? Obviously, injuries factor in. Injuries notwithstanding. It's only Wednesday, so we're only a day and a half, 2 days removed from the end of Week 1. But not a lot of roster movement. One team in particular has moved a lot. But typically, how quick are you to make some adjustments? Obviously, matchups may make some adjustments, but personally, when I lock my roster in, it's kind of hard to make an adjustment right away. It was 1 week. And so somebody who may have had an awesome week, well, were they not in your lineup because they weren't projected to do well? Was it a bad roster decision? Was it bad roster management? Or does it look like just that anomaly? On the flip side, those guys that are projected to have great seasons, if they didn't come hot out of the gate in Week 1, how long do you ride that train? How long do you keep them in there, hoping that they'll see the success they were projected? It's kind of an interesting thing. I usually like to ride my first week roster into the second week, unless there's something really sticking out that I need to make an adjustment to. Again, injuries notwithstanding. Curious how you look at that, how quickly you want to pull the trigger on some roster changes. But let's look back at Week 1. Kamish, draft said he was starting at number 1, holds his position there at number 1, gets the win over Alex Billy. The Homer quarterbacks, well, it was almost a wash, 2 points between them. Neither one of them did a whole lot to win or lose the game. It was a lot of the supporting cast, unfortunately. Jerome Ford, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even Tyreek Hill, those guys just did not show up for the read option, and unfortunately, that was that's what caused him the win. So he, as we look at the projected and the percentages, as we look at our roster management, we see that 87% for Kamish could have hit 162, and then 80 for Reed. Well, B's not too bad. Had he maximized that roster, could have won with the 156, but didn't. Oh well. All right, our next game. Love the new name, Beg Your Parsons. Appreciate not going back to the Wile E. Coyote or whatever it was that you were before you had all your name changes last year. Like the Beg Your Parsons, however, will that continue if you don't have the Packer defense? Or do you just like the name? And I like the icon. So anyway, came in strong with that one. Packers did provide a nice little spark, but really Zay Flowers was the big winner for you, Parsons. Nah, I can't say it that way. Don Chris, that was the main one, and for Joe, it was a decent showing at 127. In fact, that would have beaten at least 3 other teams. Unfortunately, not the team that you were playing. So looking at the projected, or the possible scores, I should say, Don Chris could have really blown it out at 186. So the 80.4 for his pop was the lowest for the week. Not bad. Everybody was at least at 80 for week 1. Maybe that was just because we all knew who we drafted and who we wanted. But Joe could have hit a 131. He maximized that roster. The good and the bad of that is excellent roster management at 97.5. The bad of that is it didn't really matter what you did. You wouldn't have won anyway. So, hopefully next week is a little bit different. Looking at our next game, Stankopotamus and Whiskey Business. Loving the name change. Whiskey Business is nice. We like that one. Better than Puzzles, that was puzzling. Anyway, this was a great game, right? That Josh Allen nonsense ekes out a 3-point win. This is what fantasy football is about. Watching those games to the very end, watching your team, what looked improbable, nearly impossible, somehow pull off the victory, whether it's on the field or in fantasy. And so Whiskey Business was on the receiving end of one of those miracles. If we look at the potentials and the pop, well, there's a lot of points left for Stanky there. Only an 82.5% to his best roster. But Whiskey Business nearly maxed that thing out, 97.3, and he needed all of that to get those extra points. So we'll see if he can continue that epic roster management, or if that miracle was a one-off and is only going to be a one-off. We'll see how that goes. Our next game, our low score on the week, our champion. Oh, it's tough to follow up, isn't it? Back-to-back is always tough. Everybody's coming out gunning for the champ, and that's kind of what happened, unfortunately. Crimea Rivers, great name. Was able to get that win. We look at the potentials, and again, unfortunately, our champ only had just over 81%, but even at a full max, 138, still wouldn't have been enough to take down our loser. So best and the worst from last year against each other. The worst wins out just a little bit. Could have put up 165, but didn't even need close to that. So we'll see if those trends continue. If our worst drops to, or our worst goes to first, starts to pick up. If our best from last year has a down season, we'll take a look. Now our high score of the week, Jersey Birds, new logo, but same boring name. But posted the high score, 156, and took down Poncho, who's back to, I guess, no offense, or just we're not going to discuss offense. Either way, 132 would have been good for half the league, to beat half the league. But again, you didn't play half the league; you played the guy that scored the most. We look at the potentials: 171 from Jersey Birds, still broke 90% on to his perfect roster. And back in that same situation, Poncho, no matter what he did, even at a perfect roster at 145, still wouldn't have been able to beat what Jersey Birds brought. So that's how we shape up in week one. I'm not going to bother you with the roster or the standings or points for, points against. It's exactly what you looked at just now, what we saw. You're either 1-0 or 0-1. It's not that big a deal. But what I do like to see now, let's take a little bit of time to spend on the power rankings and how much these change even just through the week before a single game is played. This is how they started. This is where they ended up. But we saw some changes along the way. Huge sweeps in what is it Wilson, ESPN, where they said we would be just out of the draft. We see huge change from Stanky there. He drops 5 spots down to 7. Parsons has a nice week, and he jumps all the way up to number 5. The only teams to stay were your commish and the team he beat, Read Option, at 1st and 8. So we'll keep an eye on this as we go through the season to see how the adjustments are made, because winning doesn't necessarily mean you're going to jump up. Losing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to drop considerably. We'll take a look at this and see how close to reality this becomes at the end of the season. So thank you for my ramble in week 1. I'm still getting into mid-season form. Enjoy week 2.